You are listening to the Choose Your Struggle podcast, a member of the Shameless Podcast Network. Today on the Choose Your Struggle podcast, it's friend of the pod and anorexia fighter Hayley Grainger. But first, Kid Mental, let's go.
Things ain't always gonna go our way, but you can always win when you choose your struggle. And some battles will be yesterday, but today is for a new beginning. Choose your struggle, and don't worry about what they say, but you can always win when you choose your struggle. And you can bounce back just as Jay. Come on and listen to Choose Your Struggle. Whoa, choose your struggles. Choose your struggle. Whoa, choose your struggle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Choose Your Struggle podcast. I don't know why I said that way, but that's fine. I'm going to leave that in. Always great to be with you. I thank you for tuning in. I'm going to underscore that this week for two reasons. Number one, the fundraiser, one more week after this one, as you're hearing this on Friday or Saturday. If you're listening on Friday, thank you for listening in the day it comes out. If you're listening on Saturday, Sunday, whatever, my birthday is Saturday, July 10th. This fundraiser is for my birthday, but we're doing it 1 week after the birthday is the deadline because Spark Tabor of the Cookies for Breakfast podcast, like last year, is going to do a stream on Twitch to help me raise funds for this. As I am recording this on Wednesday, the 7th, with the Facebook fundraiser and offline donations, we're closing in on $2,000, which is amazing. The goal is $2,500 this year. So really, I mean this. I'm just so thankful. It means so much to me. When I am asked how I measure the success of my podcast, of my work, this is the kind of thing that I point to. You know, I'm speaking next weekend at PodThon, a really cool virtual podcast conference. And my session is titled Beyond Monetization, Podcasting for Good. And I'm going to talk about this, that I was able to raise by then probably around $2,500 to $3,000 for a really incredible organization just from this work. To me, that means so much more than any money that I bring in the door for Choose Your Struggle. I know to my team, I still obviously need to make money to pay you. And that's obviously a thing that I prioritize. And don't worry, all of my team gets paid. But, beyond me personally making loads of money, doing good things with this platform is so much more important to me. So that's number one. But the number two reason I'm going to underscore to all of you, thank you so much for listening, is that I say often that I want you to reach out, that it's important to me that you reach out, that I hear from you. And today's guest is proof of that. About a little over a year ago, a young woman named Hayley Grainger reached out to me, and she had been struggling with anorexia for a good number of years and was about to enter the hospitalization for this struggle. We got to chatting, obviously, my story of spending time in a hospital in a lockdown unit for mental health stuff. And I told her, number one, please let's stay in touch. Because I obviously, there aren't a lot of people in your life who know what it's like, and I've been there, and I want to be that resource and that support for you. But number two, after you go through this, let's chat for the podcast, because I would love for you to be a guest. Well, here we are a little over a year later, and that has finally come true. Today's guest is Hayley Grainger. She is a truly powerful person. During her hospitalization, we stayed in touch, like I said, and I sent her some stuff that I know would have made my time in the hospital a little bit easier. Things like, I personally was super into word games, the kind that you buy, like penny savers, right? We all know those. If you go to the checkout line at the store, or Barnes and Noble has the whole line of them. Things like brain teasers and word searches and just all that kind of stuff to keep your brain active, because monotony can be really serious in those settings. Other things just like books and journals and things that can help keep your mind off of for a little while profile what's going on in your life. And I sent her a box from my friend at Blurt with some of those things as well, with some inspiration. She sent me a very nice card that now sits behind or on my desk all the time. It's something that I cherish because, again, it's one of those signs that this work matters. And yes, I can look at money in the door or listen, all that kind of stuff that doesn't really matter. But stuff like this from Hayley is why I do what I do. So the other thing I want to say is that she is also, and she talks about this briefly on the episode, a very accomplished jewelry artist. And I say that intentionally because her jewelry is wearable art. I have a necklace that she sent me that is wonderful, really beautiful. It's sort of a forest scene inside of the necklace. I can't do it. I don't know how she does it, but the link to check that out is in the show notes. Please do so. She is an artist with words. Check out her blog, which she talks about a couple of times. Scales Are for Fish. And she's an artist with the jewelry. It is truly something else. So definitely check her out. And Hayley, I know you're hearing this, so thank you for continuing to be an inspiration, continuing to be a friend of the podcast, and someone who I think embodies a lot of what I call for and a lot of what I do. So thank you all for tuning in. Please enjoy this episode with Hayley Grainger, and stick around till the end for your card and your good egg. A quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. I am so grateful for your support and your love. Y'all have been with me since almost the beginning, and so much of this podcast could not be done without you. Almost to a person, they've all told me that they didn't join for the perks, although there are some pretty fantastic perks, but they've all joined just to support the show, and it really means so much to me. Now, if you join, you are going to get some stuff in return. You'll get sneak peeks, extra content, and the chance to interact with me on a second level. It's really a great way to show support if you love this show. So go ahead and check it out today. Go to patreon.com/chooseyourstruggle. The lowest tier is only $3.40 a month. And there's multiple tiers after that. There's something for everybody. So I truly mean this. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. And if you've been waiting to sign up, well, now's a great time. So head on over to Patreon and show a little bit of love. Choose your struggle. Thanks for sharing the podcast with your friends. If you're listening on Apple, please rate and review, or check out the review link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Well, we are recording. I'll say this. Welcome to the Choose Your Struggle podcast. This is your host, as always, Jay Schiffman, and I'm making special notice of the fact that, as my wife really was so kind to say right before I started this recording, I sound tired. So that's where we are as we're recording this. So without no more about me and my amazing Barry White voice today. Hayley, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, we'll go from there.
Lovely. Hi, my name's Hayley. I am a 32-year-old recoverer from anorexia, and it is an absolute pleasure to join you on your podcast day. And can I just say congratulations on your whole 100 episodes. That is absolutely incredible, and I am a really big fan of yours, so thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And yes, as we're recording this, I just dropped the 100th episode, so thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, everybody, that I mentioned Hayley a couple weeks ago. I mentioned how that I had a really special guest coming up, because I was talking about how this podcast has allowed me to be connected to people that I normally would not have met, and not just big names, of course, but people who are living a very different life than my own, and people that I've become I actually, Hayley, you'll appreciate this. I said we don't have a word for what you and I are. Like, yeah, we're friendly, but we've never met each other. We're not acquaintances. We're not coworkers. Like, there's not a word for what this is, but you are someone that I admire and someone who I've learned a lot from and that I really think is doing incredible work. And everybody, when I didn't mention the person's name, but here we are. I'm finally talking to you, Hayley, and it's great to have you.
Thank you. Maybe we can be known as Across the Ponders or something like that. There definitely does need to be a name for what we have. And thank you so much. That really means a lot. Thank you.
Well, so yes, the listeners, if you cannot tell, Hayley is not from the U.S. That accent is not fake. Um, so Hayley and I got connected, what was that, probably a year ago now, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
You reached out to me, and at the time, you were just about to embark on sort of a big part of this journey we're talking about today, and we stayed in touch, and I said, I would love to have you on the show once you sort of, once the outcome of this is more known, and I would love to have you talk about it. And so this show is a year in the making.
Absolutely. And what a year it's been. Absolutely.
That's why we're here, is to hear about this incredible year. I think I'm using the word incredible not as like the way that I use it all the time, which is to mean amazing, but instead to truly mean its meaning, which is sort of awe-inspiring and truly remarkable. And it has been that for you.
I think so. On reflection, I think when you reflect on quite a difficult time in your life, it does feel like that. And obviously at the time when you're going through it, it feels anything but incredible. But it is because people like you and having more of an awareness and spreading that awareness of mental health that has made this kind of be more of an incredible experience and has been, as cringy as it sounds, quite a life-changing one. So yeah, I'm very grateful to have kind of got through this experience and to be able to call it quite an incredible one.
So I think at this point, the best way to kind of go into your story would be take us up to the point, where you and I first met. So give us a little bit of the backstory, if that makes sense.
So thinking it was just a year ago, it feels an awful lot longer than that, really. I think a lot has changed since then. I remember kind of first reaching out to you, absolutely admiring what you were doing, spreading the word about having positive stigmas, for mental health. And at that point, I was in a really dark place, a very different place to where I am now. I have been struggling with anorexia, which is a type of eating disorder, for a third of my life. I had received various types of support, ranging from face-to-face therapy to a day patient support program. And it was at that point in my day support program where I reached out to you, because unfortunately they decided that it was the right time for me to not be in the day patient support program, but actually to seek support from a hospital admission. It got to that point where it wasn't enough. Unfortunately, at that point, I had to wait a good 2 to 3 months for a bed in hospital. And I just felt extremely lost, a little let down as well, and really just needed support and someone to reach out to. So that's basically where we were about a year ago. And a lot has happened since then, which has been really positive.
So before we really talk about the hospital stay, because this will be a really interesting conversation, because this is something that I can connect with you on. Obviously, we were there for very different reasons, but I don't have a lot of guests on this show who have been through that experience the way that you and I now both have. So this will be really interesting. But before that, let's talk a little bit about the lifespan of your struggle against anorexia. How old were you when this first became a thing that you were aware of, even if you didn't know its name, even if you didn't know it was a diagnosis? It was just when you started to notice this about yourself.
Yeah, I think kind of shockingly, it was in my early teens. I think kind of when puberty hit, I became very aware of my body and who I am. And I pretty much at that point just wanted to disappear. And I think that really sowed the seed for what was going to happen sort of a few years later, where it was getting to the point where I was diagnosed with anorexia. So I would say, yeah, I've had it most of my kind of adolescence, and then obviously it did get progressively worse as I was coming into adulthood.
So a big piece of the struggle that anyone who struggles against their issues of mental health or substance misuse or whatever the
Hmm.
case is goes through is identity. I mean, we're seeing some
Yeah.
really incredible research being done on this,
Hmm.
and sort of a common thread throughout all of this. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that very much was a part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more I learn about the illness, the more I learn about how the illness has impacted me, it has completely made me realize that it is about identity. I always thought that my anorexia was a Haleyism, that it was just me, that that is just who I am, that I need to be in control of as to what I eat and to what I look like so that people will like me. But obviously, having gone through this whole process of recovery, I've realized that that actually is what anorexia is. It is a coping strategy. It is a way of coming to terms with your identity and really battling with that. So ultimately, yeah, I think the whole control over food is trying to get control over who you are and your identity.
So that's so fascinating because sort of coping is a big word that a lot of us,
Hmm.
when we talk about substance misuse, it reminds me of when I was working with a client who her son was struggling, and I helped her understand. She was seeing his use of heroin as, oh, he's just trying to party, and I said, no, heroin isn't a
Hmm.
party drug. Heroin is filling a hole, and it
Yeah.
sounds like you're saying that you're in sort of similarly
Hmm.
your inability at the time, and this is your early to mid teens, to deal with what a lot of us go through, which is,
Yeah.
who am I? Am I unique? Am I not? Do I want to be unique? Your answer to that was taking control of something, or wanting to be in control of something, and for you, your coping mechanism was this, developing, what we now call, or what you eventually were able to be diagnosed with, which is anorexia.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. And it's so interesting the way that you can compare a mental health illness such as anorexia with substance misuse. It is all very much just a validation and that control over things. And I think there are a lot of similarities actually. And it is that just addiction to wanting to feel good and to feel as though you're in control. And just that there is a massive parallel, I think, between addiction with a drug and addiction with an eating disorder. I think it is just having that control over things and feeling okay. There's a massive parallel there.
I'm hearing something in your story, which is that, if, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but if the stigma wasn't so strong and there was
Hmm.
better education, you might have known at an earlier age, oh, this is, first off, it's very common what I'm feeling, and this is something that I should probably address before it gets too late. Would
Hmm.
education have made a difference in your story?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's kind of really shaped who I am now. And I am a massive advocate for mental health. I work at a university in the mental health support team. I am now an advocate for a charity in Mind in England. And I am a massive believer that the more you know, the more you're empowered, the more difference and change that you can make. And I do believe that had I have known all this earlier, yes, I would have suffered with an eating disorder, but I would have had the skills and perhaps the capacity to deal with this a lot better and perhaps not have experienced it for as long as I have. So I think education is just power. It just enables you to learn and to grow and to support others and yourself, definitely.
this struggle starts in your early teens. What did it look like? Let's say when you were in high school. What was sort of your relationship to anorexia then? Did you know it had a name? Did you know this is what you were experiencing?
No, I think it was just always on the sidelines. I think for me, it wasn't necessarily kind of fully ingrained in me then. It was very much just a stark awareness of myself, not fitting in, feeling very uncomfortable. Just, yeah, high school was just not an easy time. And I don't think it is for anybody. But yeah, for me, it was just that massive avoidance around food because that was deemed as a treat to myself and I didn't deserve that. So that's really how it kind of festered, I suppose, was that food was seen as something of moral worth. And where I didn't like myself, I felt like I didn't deserve it, therefore I didn't eat it. That's really kind of what it manifested itself into when I was in my early teens in high school.
And is this something that like your family was aware of? That others were saying, "Hey, we're getting concerned about this."
I think yes, but not until quite a lot later on. And I would say that that would be probably in my early 20s when things really took hold and things were kind of really escalating quite quickly. Things were getting really bad in terms of my eating and my exercise and my mood. So I would say yes, but not until quite a bit later on.
For people, okay, so this is sort of going to be a tough question because I'm kind of asking you to speak for an entire condition here, but for people who we in the substance misuse field, we get a lot of people saying, oh well, it's just a choice, just stop taking the drug, right? I mean, which is foolish, but we get that a lot. So I'm sure in the field of eating disorders, you get people who just say, but just eat something. Why is this so hard? You know what I mean? So like, how do you help someone understand, okay, but that's not what's going on here. I'm not just choosing not to eat.
Oh, 100%. The reason I was giggling the whole way through you saying that was because the amount of times I have heard that is ridiculous, or very much the phrase, oh, I wish I had your willpower to not eat. It's not that, I don't like food. I absolutely love food. I was always someone that really enjoyed food, but anorexia is just, it's an effect of something. It's not necessarily the cause. So it is my depression manifesting itself into affecting my eating. So like some people, they hide away when they're depressed. I would do that, but I would also control very much what I was eating as a way of punishing. So the way I would explain it to people would be, it's similar to kind of self-harm, where you want to make your body feel something. You want to either escape or you want to get a sense of just control over things. It's not about the food, it's just a byproduct of how you're feeling. And for someone that doesn't have anorexia, that must sound really strange. For someone that does have anorexia, it still sounds really strange. I think it is one of those illnesses that even if you're suffering from it, you don't fully understand. It is just all encompassing. And I wish it was as simple as just eat the food. I think it would be absolutely amazing if that's what it was that, could solve this condition, was just eat. You can't just eat, you have to deal with the problems that are causing it at the same time.
Beautifully answered. So back to your story then. You make it through high school. It sounds kind of like this is an ongoing battle, but it is yet to sort of let's put it in an easy way for people to understand. Be winning. It's not winning yet. At what point does that table turn? At what point do you hit a point where you are no longer able to combat this? It is becoming too big of a problem for you to handle.
I think that was really sort of my last year at university. So I was, well, considered in England quite a long way from home. Probably in America, it's only around the corner for you. But I was a good sort of 6 hours away from home when I was at university. And I think everybody paints such a picture of university being the best time of your life. For me, it was a real struggle. I was quite homesick. I kind of got into some very negative relationships and very manipulative ones. And unfortunately, I was in a relationship where the guy could see my insecurities and he said them out loud. And I think for someone to voice your inner insecurities and put them out there, that is so detrimental. And I think from then on, my anorexia really clung on to those and made me feel as though all of my thoughts were truth, because if somebody could see my inner insecurities that I've never told anybody, then they must be true. So from that time on, everything I believed, all of the negatives I believed were true. And then it just kind of really took off from there, and just got gradually worse, but really took off in my final year at uni.
So that's such a man, that's such a powerful piece of the story, because it's that doesn't happen to everybody, where everyone's been in a bad relationship. That part's common. But having somebody in your life who sort of has that power and uses it in such a destructive way is unfortunately common for people who go through traumatic experiences, but is, I think, hard for a lot of people to relate to, and yet it sounds like that was such a turning point for you.
I think so. I think it's kind of coming back to that whole identity thing, and just not knowing who you are, and university is that time to find out who you are and to kind of be told that you're this person that you so don't want to be is really very difficult. And yeah, I think that was just very detrimental and just sowed the seed for everything that was to come.
So what does your struggle against anorexia look like at this moment?
I think after sort of 7 months of being in a hospital admission, I would have thought I would have come out and just been, I am free. Unfortunately, I feel as though it's the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I see myself as Hayley now, but Hayley who has anorexia, not Hayley the anorexic. So I can definitely be more myself and be more in control. My thoughts are a lot louder than my anorexic thoughts. I can flick them away instead of punch them away like I used to have to do. I think coming home from hospital has been a real challenge in lots of ways. I now drive the routes I used to walk. I don't get out of my pajamas until 1 PM when it used to be 4 AM, needing to go and walk and exercise all the time. So much has changed. But I do think it is still that onward climb to the peak of being fully recovered.
Well, that is a beautiful place to take a pause, and if you wouldn't mind shouting out where people can find you online, especially, I'm going to give you a little plug here, your fantastic blog, and then we'll come back with the second half.
Thank you. So yeah, you can find me online on my, oh my goodness, my mind has gone blank, on my blog, Scales Off for Fish. And I really hope you like what you read and learn lots from that.
Hey y'all, it's me, your host. I'm sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a fantastic episode of the podcast, but I have to give a quick shout out to my partner, Roadrunner CBD. They have been working with me for a while now, and I just love their products. They have everything from tinctures to muscle gels, and all of them are fantastic. I rub the muscle gel on my legs before I run, and they keep me feeling pretty good, which is saying something. So check out Roadrunner today at their website, www.roadrunnercbd.com/ref, REF/CYS. Again, that's roadrunnercbd.com/ref/CYS, and use the code CYS at checkout to let them know that I sent you and get 10% off. Trust me, you're gonna love this. I've sent some of their products to a couple different people, and they've all become repeat customers. So check it out today, and don't forget to let them know that Choose Your Struggle sent you. Find me on social media. Check the link in the show notes or search for me, Jay Schiffman, on YouTube and LinkedIn, and Choose Your Struggle on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So let's go now back to your story. So you've hit a point in your life where your condition, I guess this is where it would be helpful to know when you learn its name, when you learn that this is bigger than you, and sort of when it becomes, as you were kind of saying before, to the point where your family and other people are saying that they're concerned.
I think I was very, very good at dismissing that I had a problem. I was able to go to work, I was able to socialize, I was able to live life. I say that with little asterisks in the air because I don't think I was living at all. I was merely surviving. I don't think I properly came to terms with my diagnosis of being anorexic probably until about 2 years ago, when I fully realized that I'm not very well and that I really need support, that the things I really want to achieve in life, I'm unable to do. I, at that point, was unable to be a mum. My periods had stopped for about 10 years. I was unable to continue my profession of being a teacher because the demands of the job I just couldn't do anymore. So I think I finally admitted defeat about 2 years ago and really came to the realization that I really need help, that I am just surviving and not thriving, and that I don't have a life. I am controlled in my life and I needed to do something about it. So yeah, I would say 2 years ago, I really came to understand that I am an anorexic and I did need support.
And, we're getting close to the point where you and I connected, but it sounds like you were sort of living with that realization for about a year to a couple years?
So yeah, I engaged with therapy and day patient support as best I could, but I think I was still very much in denial that I had a problem. And it wasn't until they kind of said to me that they couldn't support me anymore that I kind of began to realize that this problem was bigger than me, and that I needed intensive support from hospital to kind of really deal with the problem.
So talk a little bit about, before we really talk about the actual hospital stay itself, but talk a little bit about where your feelings were heading into that, because this is where you and I connected. And I remember from you telling me you were scared. This was not something that it sort of was in my understanding, a little bit of a dual feelings, because you were not excited, but you were happy that you were going to be getting some sort of a treatment, but also terrified. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, no, absolutely, completely. I think just that whole being in denial made me very scared about what was going on. The anorexic voice in my head was just telling me this is wrong, this is not safe, this isn't what you should be doing. It goes against everything I believe in. But then I know that the rational Hayley side of me was just like, thank God someone is going to save my life. As scary and as hard as it's going to be, I need to be saved because I can't do it myself.
So you go into the hospital, and how long? You were there for a long time.
I don't think I would have gone into hospital had I have known it would have been so long. And now I realize that's why my therapist said, oh, you'll just be in there for, a couple of weeks just to get the ball rolling. Had they have said you'll be in for 7 months, I think I would have definitely run to the hills. But I think that 7 months just raises the severity of the illness, that it shows exactly what we were talking about earlier, that it's not just about the food. It's not just eat and it will solve everything. Eating helps you live, which is fantastic, but you need to solve the problems to make you actually live life. Yes, you can be alive, but you're not living. So whilst my body, was getting stronger and healthier in hospital, I also needed to work on my mind to make that healthier as well, which is why I was there for so long. Yeah, like I said before, had I have known that, I think it would have been a very different story. But I am very, very grateful for those 7 months. And yes, I was scared the whole time, but I learned to run into fear, because that is the only way that you're doing the right thing. If it feels scary, then it's the right thing to do.
Let's talk a little bit about, though, 7 months is a long time to be away in any situation.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like? If I think I'm right, you're married, and obviously you have your family, or you're
Mm-hmm.
engaged. Is that right? Or are you married?
Yeah, that's right. So we're getting married in less than 2 months now, which is very exciting.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
But
Thank you.
you have a family that you're very close to. I know you told me that before, and
Yeah.
you have a fiance. I mean, this had to be extra difficult. I did this when I was very much unattached. You did this as an adult, as a person with a life.
Yeah.
What was it like trying to maintain all those relationships being away for 7 months?
Just one word. I think it was just hell.
Yeah.
It was living and breathing hell. It was having to face your worst nightmare every day, all day by yourself, and just wanting a hug. And I think that was the hardest thing. For me, my fiance is my best friend. He is literally my rock, and to not have that there was so hard. It wasn't helped because of the pandemic, so I wasn't allowed any visitors. So we went months without seeing each other. Thankfully, towards the end of my admission, I was able to see him an hour a week. But yeah, I think for anybody who is going through a very difficult time, you really rely on your support network to get you through it. And to not have your support network there, it was just awful. It was really, really hard. But thank goodness for technology, and being able to talk on the phone every day. That was incredible. But yeah, to not actually physically see them or be able to give them a hug for a very long time was so hard.
Well, props to your fiance. That is. I mean, there are stories, I think, that are much more common where that goes a very different direction.
Yeah,
And so really props to him,
absolutely.
and also really happy for you that you guys have that kind of
Thank you.
relationship, that he was emotionally able to be that supportive.
Yeah, I think that is just a complete reflection of him and what an incredible person he is. And you're so right, many a people would have absolutely not stuck around for that. But to have his support there every day kind of made me realize that maybe if he wants to stick around, then maybe I am worth fighting for. And yeah, I literally could not have got through that without him.
So this is the part of the interview where we both cried. That was very beautiful.
And my fiance cringes.
Well, you'll have to play this for him. I'm sure he knows how much you appreciate, but you'll have to play this part for him.
Yeah.
So okay. So first off, by the way, thank you. You're being very vulnerable, and obviously I very much appreciate that. Let's talk a minute about what being sort of two levels here, because you and I again can commiserate over what it's like being in a lockdown unit. We both were there. I was there for 3 weeks before going to a different place for 3 months. You were there for 7 months, which is incredible. But also what it's like being in a sort of hospitalization ward for an eating disorder, because that's a very different experience. So what was a normal day like for you in the hospital?
So it was very much a structured day. It was a very long day. We would be up at about 6:30 in the morning, and we would have medical checks 4 times a day. So first thing in the morning, we would have our heart monitored, blood pressure taken, just to make sure that everything was okay. We would then have meds and breakfast at about 8:30, and then from then on we would be eating every 2 hours, which for someone with anorexia is absolutely hell. But I can imagine lots of people will be listening to this thinking, oh, that's amazing, every 2 hours getting to eat. But it's literally like going into the boxing ring every 2 hours, being absolutely terrified that you're going to lose the fight. It felt like that every 2 hours. So we would have that. And then in between those, we would have sort of therapy sessions, be that on your own or group therapy. And that was the day really. After every meal, we would have something called supervision. So that would be when you were all expected to sit in the lounge for an hour after every main meal, just for one, observations, and two, to make sure that we're not doing anything detrimental to our recovery. So compensatory behaviors like going to the bathroom or exercising. So yeah, pretty much all day you would be with people. It was pretty exhausting. And it was pretty much like that sort of every day.
Was your unit was it both men and women, or was it just women?
Yeah, it was for both men and women. When I was there was only one guy, and the rest were women. So that was quite interesting. A lot of them were teachers as well, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah.
Were you able to make any friends, or was this so stressful that you really weren't even able to have those interpersonal relationships?
The people I met in my admission were more like family at the time. Um, just the amount that you would rely on that person to get through the day. I can't even comprehend getting through the day without them. They were just exceptional human beings. And I am really, really lucky to say that I'm going to have friends for life with those friends that I made there. In fact, one of them um, designed a tattoo for me, and I now have that on my back, and that kind of gets me through every day because it reminds me of my friend. And I always think to myself, what would she do? And she would do the scariest thing. And yeah, she's always with me now, always challenging me, and I like that. So I would say that as weird those relationships are, it's not normal to see, friends as family in a hospital setting. They actually are there to save you and guide you and be there for you. So I feel very lucky and very, very privileged to have met those people that I did in hospital.
That is awesome. That is very cool. So what was the therapy like for in this hospital? Was it,
Hmm.
you had group, you said, but I imagine this would be a much more, or maybe it wouldn't be, but a much more understanding group, and not as, a lot of the therapy I went through for because the issue was both mental health and drugs was very
Hmm.
not accusatory, but a little harsh at times.
Hmm.
Was there a lot of challenging therapy, or was it more supportive and uplifting?
Oh, that's a good point. And I think really it depended on your mood at the time. I think the therapy sessions were meant to be uplifting, but if you were going in feeling very depressed, then you kind of have that black cloak over you all the time. I think it was meant to be empowering. So we had body image sessions where you're meant to kind of see your body as your friend, but very much if you're going in with the whole, I've just had lunch and I feel absolutely disgusting, my body is not my friend right now, is very difficult to see it that way. I think a lot of them were kind of building up your resilience and your ability to cope with emotions and relationships and things like that. So they were very hard hitting subjects, but they were done in a very kind of light hearted way, I suppose. There were a mixture. I think it just depended on what the topic of conversation was that week.
And what was there? Was there individual therapy too, or just group?
Yeah, so every week you would meet with an individual therapist for an hour a week. And really you would have a formulation as to how we think we've got to this point, what we need to discuss, what we need to really work on, and it was just very individualized to each patient. And I can safely say that my therapist really listened to what I needed and was just amazing at supporting me throughout my time there.
That is wonderful. So you left the hospital now. How long ago?
It was a month on Saturday.
Congratulations. By the time this comes out, it'll be almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Or probably a little less than. Actually, this will drop in a couple weeks, so never mind.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah. So you're, as you perfectly said earlier, and this is the reason I asked you this, I want to swoop back around, is that you sort of beautifully articulated that you are not quote unquote recovered, that this is an ongoing work. So are you back in sort of a day patient? Are you in, what is your continued care look like?
So I now see an outpatient therapist once a week. So I have a 45-minute session once a week. And I get medically monitored. So I have my bloods done and an ECG. So they look at my heart every other week. And that's basically my care now. So it is a major shift from very intensive support to essentially go at it on your own and I'll help you for 45 minutes a week, which I think has been the biggest challenge on in my recovery journey now. Is just the kind of, it all relies on me, and I have to do what I need to do. I just see my food as my medicine, but obviously it's still battling those thoughts all the time. But that's why I'm so grateful that I have that that time with my therapist every week to kind of talk about my challenges in the week and figure them out and put a plan in place.
And how are you feeling currently about your ability to face this challenge?
A little like a failure, if I'm going to be honest. I think that's because I'm very hard on myself and I need to realize that it's not going to be perfect. I am going to make mistakes. It's hard. I just need to keep doing what I need to do and not listen to the voices and just keep with my plan. I'd say I'm 90% of the way to doing what I'm needing to do, but not quite 100% yet.
Well, I think that is a very beautiful and vulnerable thing to say, that so often, even those of us who do this this work, what people kind of want to hear is, I feel empowered, and that is true a lot of the times, but that's not always the case. And you're right, this struggle, maybe you will get lucky and through hard work. It's not really luck, that's not the right thing to say, but you'll get to a point where it really is in the rear view mirror. But a lot of times the struggle is sort of, if you're in the car, it's always running right there next to you, and you're not going to let it in, but you're aware that it's there. And so hearing that maybe to keep this ridiculous analogy going, the window has become cracked and it's trying to get back in the car, it is a really important thing to say, because it's acknowledging that you are human, that there is, even as you are on a better swing right now, it's still tough and you're still fighting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think I was very, I don't know, I think I kidded myself that, I'm out of hospital, everything will be fine, I'll be fully recovered. And I think that's what I think a lot of my friends and family think of me, is that, oh, you're not in hospital anymore, you must be better. Whereas I am better, but I'm still not recovered. I think this is where the real work starts. I'm seeing this as my full-time job now, is I very much need to keep on the straight and narrow and to do what I need to do and not let, those voices win. And you're right, you're completely right. It is finding those cracks in the window, but it's learning to seal those up and just be like, the life that you gave me, anorexia, is not the life I want anymore, because it wasn't living. It was just hell.
Well, and to sort of put a finer point on that, this is something I talk about a lot too, because when I entered recovery, which was spring of 2010, we see in movies and in sort of the way that this story is told sometimes, someone, gets off the drugs and then that's it, they're done. Yay, success. And it's like, that's not true. That's not how this works,
Wouldn't you love for that to be the case? I think that would be absolutely amazing. But
right? I mean, it took me 5 years to really feel healthy and at a point where I was sort of like on flat ground again. I wish it was the case where I got off the drugs and I could lift my hands up and go, mission accomplished, Yeah. But it's so important for people like you to tell your story and say, no, I'm in recovery, I'm getting better, but I'm not there yet. I'm still fighting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I guess this was very much the same for you. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I've now come out of hospital and now I'm like, who am I? Because so much of my life was my eating disorder. Every part of my day was, channeled towards that. And getting the high from walking 2 hours a day nonstop, and doing exercise and not eating or eating very little, and now it's kind of like, God, what do I do with my day? It's very different from life before hospital, and it's figuring that out as well. And I didn't really appreciate that would be a problem when I came back. And I'm wondering if that was kind of the same for you when you came out and stopped with your addiction, and kind of knowing what your day now looks like without that. It's so bizarre.
It was definitely a struggle of sort of, when I describe what those 5 years were when I was getting healthy, I talk about, my maturity catching up and relearning how to be a person in a world where all of my go-tos before were pop pills and it was re-education and refiguring out who I am. So I definitely commiserate with that. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that, it is going to be hard, but at the same time, you sound like to me, like a person who, I gotta say, is in a better position mentally than I was when I first entered recovery. And so, I believe in your ability to keep putting one foot in front of another, and it'll be, what I would love is, a year down the line, 5 years down the line, you coming back and saying, here's what this time has been for me. Here's where I am now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look what you've achieved. Who knows? Watch this space.
Well, thank you, Hayley, so much for this. This is incredible. Before we go into the final conversation or the final questions, one more time, please shout out where people can find you online and where they can come follow you.
Yep, so I have a blog, Scales Off for Fish, and I would really love for everybody to give it a read and learn a little bit more about my struggles.
And it is a wonderful blog. I read it. You should definitely do so. Well, Hayley, we finish with the same two questions every time. The first one, maybe a little more difficult because you're kind of relearning this right now. But what are your self-care habits?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think self-care habits is something that I've really worked very hard on, because for me, self-care always meant being selfish. And I've learned that definitely is not the case. So for me, self-care is spending time doing things that I really enjoy. So I'm currently sat in my beautiful craft room that my fiance made for me whilst I was in hospital, just kind of looking at all of the beautiful crafts that I do to make my self-care as positive as it can be. So for me, one, doing things I enjoy, so mindful activities like crafts, and I would definitely say meeting up and connecting with people is another way that I really look after myself.
And I can definitely say, as someone who has bought some of your crafts, they are beautiful, and you definitely need to be charging more for that. That was
ridiculous. It's a very British thing.
That's fair. Also a very recovery thing. Relearning your worth, which is definitely much more than what you're charging. So everybody, go check out her crafts because I bought a beautiful necklace and it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Last question is, we've now spent the last almost 50 minutes learning why you're incredible, why we should all be following the work you're doing. But please shout out a couple of people that you follow, what you're reading, watching, listen, whatever you want that we should all go check out.
So I would definitely highly recommend following one of my best friends on Instagram called Cara Lisette. She is absolutely incredible in terms of really supporting those that are struggling with their mental health. So she's a mental health advocate, and she has also is in recovery from an eating disorder. Absolutely amazing person. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more about anorexia and how to deal with your mental health or to support other people with anorexia, then I highly recommend somebody called Tabitha Farrar. She has a blog, she has a podcast, and she has the most incredible book I have ever read called Rehabilitate, Rewire and Recover. And I really cannot tell you enough how amazing it is. She just understands anorexia and how to support those with it. And she actually recovered by herself from an eating disorder. So she is my all-time hero.
Beautiful. I will definitely add that to the list. Hayley, thank you so much for your vulnerability, for telling us your story. And, it is pretty amazing that when or how far you've come from when we first connected. And I will say, this is you're gonna be like, oh my God, no, because British. But I'm not surprised. You were. I know. I can't imagine how hard this was. I know that I have no idea because every person's struggle is different, even if we have overlapping themes. But when we first connected, I very quickly said, I'll get you on the show when you've left the hospital. And I had no doubt whatsoever that we were going to reach this point because you had that in you. And even, as you continue to fight this through the setbacks and the challenges that will come, I truly believe in your ability to keep fighting. And I'm sure you are going to keep having an incredible impact on others.
Oh, thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate that. That's really lovely. Thank you.
The Choose Your Struggle podcast has been so lucky to have numerous truly change-making authors on this show. From Adee Jaffe to Emily Dufton, we have been blessed by hearing them speak, and now it's time to grab their works. Now, you could go to Amazon if you wanted to shop online, but let's be honest, that's not the right choice. So I'm going to invite you to head over to my partner, Bookshop. If you go to bookshop.org/shop/CYS, again, that's bookshop.org/shop/CYS, you're going to find all of your favorite books and you're going to support the podcast in the process. But that's not even the best part. Bookshop has an incredible program that allows you to select your favorite mom and pop or neighborhood bookstore, and they will give them some of the proceeds from your order. Now, living here in Philly, that's been a really hard choice because we have fantastic bookstores all over, but I selected Harriet, which is a truly wonderful Black-owned bookstore in Northern Philly. I love it. My wife loves it. We go there as much as we can. Honestly, why would you go anywhere else? So again, go check out Bookshop at bookshop.org/shop/CYS. You're going to find the book you're looking for. You're going to support your neighborhood bookstore, and you're going to support the podcast in the process. So check it out today and go ahead and buy that book you've been waiting for. Subscribe to my Patreon for behind-the-scenes looks at the podcast, sneak peeks, and bonus data. You'll also get a discount on Choose Your Struggle merch. Find it at patreon.com/chooseyourstruggle. All right, we've come to the end of another episode of the Choose Your Struggle podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Hayley. Please, again, go check out her blog, her store with her wearable art. It's her story to me is so it's so important. And I want to talk about that for a second because this is something I said to her on the way in when I was interviewing her. Obviously, we've been talking now for over a year, and I, as you can tell from the people that I bring on, very seldom do I have people that I don't feel comfortable. Maybe comfortable is not the right word. I don't feel learned enough, whether through traditional or lived experience learning, to have a conversation with, right? You know, if I'm talking to someone about drug policy, obviously very, very learned on that. Someone who struggles with mental health, substance misuse, all that. But there are certain people that come on here sometimes that I don't feel as confident about, not about anything about them, except that they're either lived through or learned about a subject that is beyond my knowledge or their level of intelligence as with a future guest who I just finished actually interviewing yesterday, the writer Michael Ruzzino, writer and researcher, who is so smart that I told him on the way in, like, I'm scared I'm going to like insult you with these questions, you know. But I felt that way with Hayley because when I was in lockdown, I was there with a couple of people who were struggling with eating disorders, one of whom is still a longtime friend. We knew each other before that. We've become better friends since. And I'm going to see her for the first time in a couple months, which is going to be fantastic. But I just know so little about eating disorders, struggles with eating issues, or anything in that realm. And of course, there's the connection about both of us were in the hospital. Both of us the mental health side of things. Because that's what a struggle with anorexia, bulimia, any of the what we would traditionally think of as eating disorders. That's what they are. They're mental health struggles like anything else. And of course, there's that connection. But at the same time, I just feel so much less eloquent and educated about talking about that, and that limits me sometimes, and I recognize that. And yesterday I was talking with friend of the pod, JT Frank. You all heard me on his podcast, Consequences of Habit, which I released as a special episode on this podcast. And he was sort of counseling me a little bit because there's someone he connected me with that I'm going to have on the pod. I was just being hesitant because I felt that I couldn't do our conversation. I was going to do our conversation a disservice. And JT correctly pointed out that I was being foolish and I needed to hear that. So I say all that to say, number one, to thank you for Hayley because she was such a wonderful guest. She's been such a wonderful, across the ponder, as we said, because there isn't a word for someone who is our relationship. You know, we never met in person. We are friendly, but we're not, I'm not going to call her up and chit chat or something. We're also not acquaintances. But she's been such an incredible person in that respect. And also because that's going to be your good egg this week, which is sort of twofold. Number one, if you have somebody in your life, JT is a great guy. He's not the guy to go to for these things, although he was fantastic in that moment. But let them talk to you in a way that you hear and lets you know you're being stupid. But also challenge that for yourself. I need to think of a good pithy way to say this so I can put it in the show notes. Recognize your own shortcomings. That's not really what I'm saying. Recognize your own limitations. That's also not really it, but you all know what I'm saying. Be aware of where you are limiting yourself. Because every time I'm afraid of that, I'm always wrong. Hayley and I had a wonderful conversation. Michael Ruzzino and I had a wonderful conversation that you'll hear in a couple weeks. And this person that I'm working on now getting on the show that JT connected me with, it's going to be great. So recognize when you are limiting yourself. Let's go with that way. And in that honor, and in honor of Hayley, we're going to go with the Believe in Yourself card pack from Blurt. Believe in Yourself from Blurt. Thank you, Blurt. There are the cards. I'm going to shuffle this week because I'm confident I'm not going to throw them around the room. Okay, here is your card. Self-kindness, even in the most microscopic of doses, is transformative. It's a good card. That's literally what I'm talking about. Is to take a moment to say, using this example, you know what? Even if you don't do an incredible job, you're still going to do a good job. I am very confident in my ability to do this show. Obviously, over 100 episodes. It's reached all the heights. I don't need to go into all that stuff. But there are times where I limit myself, and a lot of that. I was on a call yesterday with a couple people you all know, including Jen Trepic and the Imran, the founder of Great Pods, who you'll hear on this podcast in a couple of weeks, and Alex Kaplan and Mark Zuckerbrow of Substance, and Freddie Shagaga of The Message. We're all in sort of a founders entrepreneurial roundtable together. And they were kind of poking fun at me, rightfully so, that I was downplaying myself about something, and in a good natured way. I wasn't like ribbing on myself. I was just describing something in a way that was not factual and was limiting, and they were giving me shit for it, accurately so. And so you need to have those people in your life, because sometimes we as humans cannot see things in a correct way, especially when it comes to ourselves. So, definitely even just a little bit of self-kindness can be transformative. So take a moment for that. But above all else, as always, be vulnerable, show your empathy, spread your love, and choose your struggle.